How did you meet Tal and what was your impression?
No, Tal, I'm not quite sure where I met him. I think it was at the St. John's candidates. No, I think it was a candidates tournament in St. John's in Canada. And I went there and Nigel was playing there and Kasparov was playing there. No, it cannot be a candidates. My memory is failing. But anyway, I was at this, let's call it the candidates tournament, and they were there, and Tal was there. And I met him, and he was a humorous, funny guy. We had a little bit of fun, not very much at the time because he was there. And then one day there was this World Blitz Championship. And it was the strongest ever played. I mean, everyone was playing there. And Tal was also playing there. And it was round after round. And then in one round, I think it was right at the end, they were about to start and Tal was not at the board. So they said, "Where's Tal? Where's Tal?" So I went around also looking like everyone else. I found him in a corner in the restaurant, sitting there. And I went to him and I said, "Michael, your game is starting. Come on, quickly." And he said, "Oh, my goodness." And then he struggled to his feet. And I sort of took his hand and guided him. And when you walk with someone who's inebriated, you can feel it because he keeps pulling you back and forth. So he was inebriated. And I took him to the board and he plumped into his seat. I thought, oh God, this is a catastrophe. I mean, the man is drunk, I thought. And he just won the game easily. And he won the entire Blitz event. And at least in the closing phases, he was under the influence of alcohol. But amazingly, that part of his brain which plays superb Blitz was wide awake. And this is a phenomenon I offer you as something totally unusual. What do you think?
I'm simply incredulous because if there is any championship that I have known played over, it is this championship, and I don't think that I know enough about it now that actually I have heard you, because that last round was special. It was incredible, and it's so fortunate that you were there, you were a witness to one of the greatest championships, because Kasparov was eliminated, if you remember.
Yes.
Karpov was eliminated, and in the last
Short
round,
was eliminated.
they were all eliminated. And in the last round, there was only Tal and there was Vaganian.
Yes.
And Vaganian was actually in terrific form. They were great friends, but at the board, they were just like hungry lions, okay, at each other's throats. And this, I never knew, I never imagined that Tal was drunk. He was drunk and he was inebriated when he came to play that last round game with Vaganian. That game must be seen by all viewers, because Vaganian was actually winning. He was winning. He could have won with a rook sacrifice if I mistake not. He missed it, and then Tal made a series of sacrifices and Tal just won.
We joined this game at this key position where Tal has just played his knight to d5. Vaganian played rook to g4 check here, and you can't go to h1 because of queen h2 mate. So king f1, and here try to find the win for black. As Professor Havannur said, there was a rook sacrifice in the air with rook to g1, king g1, queen takes h2, king f1 and queen h1 mate. But Vaganian missed it. He took on h2, and here Tal was in his element. King e1, Now sacrificing the rook first, then the knight, and the rook came in, check, queen e5, bishop d4, and once the queens were exchanged, Tal went on to win the game with ease.
And Vaganian, actually being a very devoted friend of Tal, he just actually accepted the second place. Tal was first, and Tal, forever the evasive guy, was asked, Misha, how did you win the championship? He said, I just smoked 2 packs of Kent, that's all. But he didn't tell them about the vodka he took.
Yes, I think, thank you very much. And I'll make a deal with you. Please look at these games again. I don't know if it was the very last round. I think it was. But take a look at these games and tell me how this is possible. But anyway, Tal was just a wonderful person. I met him a couple of times afterwards at tournaments in Brussels, I think. And typically in Brussels, for example, one last story. In Brussels, I was in the press room and I was showing the grandmasters a problem position, which was very difficult. And it's a tricky problem. I think it was one given to me by Plaskett. And it's very, very hard. And I was showing them and they couldn't solve it and so on. And Tal walked by and he looked at it, he sort of glanced at it, and then he walked away, not interested. And he went for a long walk in the park. And when he came back, he says, where's Frederic? And everyone had to go and search for me. Come here. I will show you the solution. And he showed me the solution. So what he had done is walked through the park, solving it in his mind, and he solved it. And I had a number of little experiences like that with him. And he remained a friend to the end. Unfortunately, by the way, he knew that he was dying. He knew that this is not going to last. And I remember the last time I met him, he sort of said, okay, as we'll remain friends, but it's not going to last. I'm on my way out. This is what the message in the way he spoke was, Fred, I'm on my way out. And it was very, very sad. But he was an incredible personality. So, his eyes and the way he looked at you and his intensity and his humor, I treasure my short acquaintance with him.
Fred, I just want to draw your attention to a very curious kind of coincidence. You can actually call it a strange act of fate. Think of Spassky. Here was a man who beat Tal, who beat Korchnoi, and the world does not know, but you would know, when Bobby Fischer was asked to name 10 great players in chess history, one of them was Boris Spassky back in 1960s, because Bobby, who used to beat everyone, had lost to Spassky. And he felt, this is a player who is great and I have not managed to beat him. I agree, it all changed in the World Championship match in 1972. Even then, nobody can take away Spassky's greatness. Did you have interaction with him, with Boris?
Oh, yes. And marvelous interaction. Spassky, I think I got to know when he came to Hamburg to promote some chess playing computer or something. I got to know him and very briefly, and I remember there were a number of very famous chess players there, and it was in a department store, I think, and yes, it was. And what happened was, this is just an aside, before we start talking about Spassky, I brought a wooden chessboard and I had a felt pen, And I got all these people, including Spassky, to sign the board. I still own that board. And he signed it, and all the others. And the head of the department store said, "This is a fantastic idea. Go get the best board we have." And this young boy ran and got this board and felt pen, and he had the same thing done. And then he called the apprentice and he said, "Now take this into the room at the back and keep it very carefully, because of these names here." And so the boy took it away. The players, we had finished our dinner and so on, and they all left. And then the boy came with the board and he said, "I tried my best, but the stains cannot be removed." So he had not understood. He thought, you take it to the room at the back and get rid of these stains. So he polished it and so on. It was devastating. Okay, but let's go to Spassky. Spassky I met at that occasion. And then I didn't see him for a long time, or didn't meet him. And then I was flying to the tournament in St. John's, which I told you about. And Canada, snow. So our plane landed, I think, in Toronto. And they said, "No, the onward flight is delayed," and gave me a very nice room in a very nice hotel and with meal and everything. And so I went down to dinner, and suddenly Spassky walks over and he says to me, "Excuse me, Frederic," or Mr. Friedel probably, he said, "I do not want to disturb you. I saw you on the plane, but of course I did not want to disturb you." I said, "You cannot disturb me. You're the famous person." He said, "But maybe we can have dinner together." I said, "Of course, let's have it." This is like one of the greatest chess players in the world coming to me in this way. So we sat down, we had dinner together, and we had an endless supply of really good Canadian wine. And we got one bottle of anything you want. And so we sat there till 4 o'clock in the morning or even longer. And he told me 80% of everything I know about chess history, and okay, I'm exaggerating, but about chess history, about FIDE, about his matches and so on, and how much he was paid for his match, for his world championship title in Moscow, and how it was run and so on. So it was incredibly valuable to me. And then we spent some time in St. John's, and then whenever we met, we always spoke and sometimes had dinner together. And then many, many years later, there was a candidates tournament in Elista in Russia. And FIDE talked me into coming there, so I flew there. And when I arrived, who was there? Spassky, of course. He was doing commentary. And so we had lunch and dinner together, usually. And I saw something quite extraordinary. A lot of young players crowding around us and talking to him. He's an old man. I'm also not so young. And they were interested in talking to me. He's charismatic, white hair and so on. And then one day I said to the organizers, I said, "Listen, we're here in this city chess, they call it, a whole city Ilumshinov had built for chess." I told Ilumshinov you should call it Chess City, but they called it City Chess. And I said, "I'm in Elista, I would like to see the step." And he said, "No problem, I will." Actually, this was Ilumshinov. He said, "No problem, I will arrange for you to see the step." And Spassky heard this and he said to me, "Can I join you?" I said, "Yes, of course, that would be wonderful." So a car arrived and they took us to a statue of a tank, a monument for a tank. And they said, "This is a very famous." I said, "Yeah, that's very nice. Can we go to the step?" And they said, where exactly do you want to go? I said, I want to see the steppe. I want to see animals and things like that. Ah, yes. So he took us to a race course. And he said, look, there are horses here. So after a while, we gave up and said, okay, let's go back home. And we came to Chess City. And very disappointed. And Spassky says to me, you know, if you go right to the end, the steppe starts there. And I said, yeah, but there's a fence around it. And he said, but I know where there's a hole in the fence. So he took me there and he crawled through that hole. I said, can you do it again? I want to photograph that. And he said, yes, of course. And so he crawled again and I took photographs of it. And then I crawled through the hole and then we went for a walk in the steppe. And this was, you know, I still have a pair of sneakers which have seeds attached to it from the plant life there. And we walked for many, many hours. We got lost in the steppe. We said, where's the hotel? Isn't it there or there? And Spassky actually started singing a lot. And he was singing American songs like, oh, what a beautiful morning, and so on. And I said, where did you get to know this? Bobby teach me. And really, he knew these songs from Bobby Fischer. And we had this wonderful walk. At last, we found the hotel. We returned there. And lunch was already almost over. We sat down for lunch. And the players, other young players came crowding around us. And he said, don't come close. We have been walking for many hours and we're full of sweat. And then he went up to the room and came down impeccable and did his commentary. So this was a wonderful experience with Spassky for me and for Boris Spassky. How do I know this? Whenever I meet him now, I met him in Zurich and in many places, and we're standing around in conversation. And I mention this. I say, you know, we went to the steppe together. He will just cross the group of people, come to me and hug me. Because apparently this is also one of his great, he enjoyed this tremendously. I also caught grasshoppers. They have giant grasshoppers and I caught them, photographed them, and Boris said, you're the bravest man in the world. Because I was catching grasshoppers. So we had a lot of fun together. And I met him at many tournaments. And his hair became whiter and he became more beautiful as a man. And one day I said to him, you're incredible, this hair and this. And he says, yeah. You know, so it is right for me to dye my hair. And I said, what do you mean dye your hair? He said, you think this is the natural color? It's pure white? I said, yes, isn't it? What is your natural color? He said, if I didn't dye it, it would be jet black. You know, it's his joke. So he's a very funny person and I enjoy being with him. Now he has moved back to Moscow and he's becoming very frail. And when I see pictures of him or video of him at events, I feel very sad because the man I was running around the steppe with was vigorous. He helped me across streams and so on. And now he's become frail. And by the way, at the Olympiad in Dresden, there was a press conference and somebody asked him, how do you do your preparation for chess? And he said, I do not prepare for chess. I'm preparing for death. We said, what? And he says, yes, it's a long end game and it's a very difficult end game. So I prepare for that, which is very poignant. Boris, I hope that he'll be around for a while and I hope I see him again.
That's a pity because now you look at him, he looks like a fragile old sparrow. That is sad. Hopefully, he would regain at least part of his health.
Yeah.
Okay, old age notwithstanding. Now, to return to Spassky, there is always another fate interlinked with Spassky, that is Bobby. So, what could you say about your interaction with Bobby?
Well, that lasted. Okay, when Bobby Fischer was the hero of my childhood, of my youth, early youth. I had three heroes in sport. One was in boxing. Would you like to guess? Muhammad Ali. I worshipped him. He was superb. In football, it was Franz Beckenbauer, the German football player who was the greatest of all time, I think. And the third was Bobby Fischer. And when he played against Spassky, I played through every move. I would get the newspaper the next day, I would play it on a board, and it was fantastic. So I tried to contact him. And he was then living in Pasadena, and I wrote letters to him. Once a year, I would write a handwritten letter to him saying, I'm Frederic Friedel, and telling him about computers and about all kinds of things. Sorry. And I would get no reply. I even tried to phone him, and I had to talk to Claudia Macaro, I think was her name, who shielded him. She was from the Church of God, and she shielded him, and she interviewed me. And I remember that at one stage, she said, she called me back and said, I don't believe that you're German. I said, why not? She said, your English is too good. So I said, well, I went to school in English schools, and I graduated, I studied in Oxford, so, but never got to meet him, and nothing happened. And then he disappeared, and then he played against Spassky again, much later in Belgrade. No, in Yugoslavia. And then one day, I was standing in my hallway, dressed, ready to go out with my wife and my son. And we were just opening the door, and the phone rings. And I said to Ingrid, should I take it or should I just ignore it? I'll take it. So I took the phone, and the voice at the other end said, is this Mr. Friedel? I said, yes. Who's this? He says, this is Bobby Fischer. I said, come on. Really? And he said, yes, I want to talk to you about something. I said, Bobby, I've been trying to contact you for 20 years now, and suddenly you call my number? And he said, it's actually 24 years or something like that. Didn't you write a handwritten message to me to Pasadena? And so I knew it was Fischer. It's not a prank call. He knew this letter. And as I signaled to Ingrid, go, I'm going to talk. I spoke to him for an hour or more. And then he called me again and again and again. So I spoke to him very often on the phone. And the reason he called was Bobby invented the Fischer clock, which is used universally now, which gives you a few seconds after each move. And as I even teased him about it, is when you lose the ability to play rigorously fast chess, you invent some way to circumvent that. And he did that. And now, since openings preparation was too hard for him, he invented Fischer random chess. And this is to shuffle the pieces in a certain way. You know what Fischer random chess is? And he's invented this game. And so he called me, and he said, chess as it's played now is called the old chess. And this is the new chess. And with the new chess, it's much, much better, and I can beat anyone. And I want to challenge the world champion Anand to a match. And we have decided that we will award this to your company, ChessBase. So ChessBase can stage this match. And it will only cost you a couple of $1 million. I said, Bobby, you can't do that. We can't afford it. And you cannot pay a couple of $1 million. You have to approach a big company. And then I spent a lot of time I must tell you something which happened in between. What happened was he had decided he wanted to play against Anand. He decided that ChessBase should be the company to finance this, because they can then broadcast it and so on. And he sent his only friend, Gada Sverrisson, to Hamburg to talk to me and discuss it. Actually, Gada said, come to Iceland. I said, can I meet Fischer? He said, no. So I said, you come to Hamburg. And Gada got on a plane and came to Hamburg. And he stayed in my home, and we've become friends ever since. So Fischer was interested in playing against Anand, and he and Gada had sat together and discussed it and decided ChessBase will do it. But of course, ChessBase wouldn't do it. And I told him, we can maybe cough up 5,000 or 10,000 euros for this match. But even the broadcast rights, everyone will carry it if you play against Anand in new chess, Fischer random chess. And then I explained to him how he should go about it. He should announce what he told me. He should announce publicly. He should say, old chess is dead. It's a boring game. It's only about preparation. I have invented a new form of chess, and I challenge the world champion. I will beat everyone else. And then wait for the company, which might be a Korean shoe manufacturer, might be Coca-Cola. So you don't decide on who's going to sponsor it. You offer this. And I said, I'll help you with the press conference and everything. I discovered that he couldn't do it in Germany because he would be arrested in Germany for his anti-Semitic remarks, which were public. So he couldn't come to Germany. And it was interesting. After a while, I was in complete awe of talking to Fischer all the time. After a while, you lose this awe and you start teasing him. And I was saying things which nobody believes you can say to Fischer, and he was accepting them. I was teasing him about his inability to learn openings, so he has invented a form of chess where you don't have to learn openings. He couldn't play fast enough. He invents a clock which helps him to overcome that difficulty. And I told him the next step is you should invent a form of chess where blunders can be taken back. So if you blunder something, you're allowed to say, according to the rules of chess, I retract. And then you take back, and so on, So I was joking a lot with him, and also about other things. And he took it, and sometimes I would contradict him very radically. And I would think, okay, this is it. He's going to never talk to me again. And 2 days later, he will call me and say, I was thinking about what you said. I'll tell you what the mistake in your thinking is. And then he was thinking about it. So it was very nice. And then one day, late at night, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I told him, Bobby, you can't call me at 2 o'clock in the morning to rant about my Jewish friends. I can't take that. And he said, okay. And he never called again. I called him a couple of times because I had some information and news, but he decided, okay, that is it. And unfortunately, he had this kidney problem and he refused proper treatment. And a year later or 2 years later, he was dead. And that was a really sad thing. But anyway, I had these interesting conversations, and of course I'll never forget them.